Good morning, Bucknutters. Welcome to the Bucknuts Morning 5 here on Wednesday, September 24th. I almost forgot what month we were in here. Yeah, September 24th, 2025. I have Dave Biddle flying solo on today's show. We're going to get into kind of translating what Ryan Day said yesterday. I thought it was an interesting press conference yesterday. I think Ryan Day is great with the media, but football coaches are not going to come in there and tell you everything that's on their mind, obviously. That would be malpractice. So we're going to go back to way back in the day. We did front row radio back when we didn't even know what podcasts were. We just called it internet radio, and we used to do translating Trestle back in the day. We're going to do a little translating day today. What did you really mean about Eddrick Houston when you talked about Eddrick Houston? What do you mean about Bo Jackson when you talk about Bo Jackson? What about some of the other things he talked about? We're going to get into all that. This is not going to be the longest show ever. We're not going to harken back to the true Bucknuts Morning 5 days where it was like 5 minutes. And Dan Rubin and I kept pushing, and eventually we made it into a pretty lengthy show. But so it won't be like a 5-minute show, but it'll probably be more than the 20-minute range. I have some personal things to take care of. Nothing that's bad or anything. So, all right, let's get to it. So Eddrick Houston, a lot of people, I wouldn't say people are freaking out. I've just gotten a lot of questions about this from personal friends, from people on Bucknuts, Twitter. Just people asking me, are they down on Eddrick Houston? Because what did Coach Day say yesterday? He said, he's got to be more consistent. Mentioned consistency a couple of times, but he said the talent is there. I think people are maybe reading too much into that. This whole show is going to be me reading too much into what Ryan Day said. No, I think people are reading too much into that. They know Eddrick Houston is definitely their best 3-tech. There's no doubt about it. I mean, look, he barely was able to practice in camp and still played, pretty much the entire Texas game. And they looked at the Texas game as like just a massive game, and rightfully so. That tells me a lot. Then what happened the next week? Eddrick's out there. He get a couple of pre-snap penalties, just losing focus, just trying to get a head start so he can maybe get a sack or whatever it might be, a TFL. You can't have any pre-snap penalties is what they teach you. But, you have 2 pre-snap penalties against Grambling. It just makes it look like you're not focused and you're just like worried about your personal stats. So what they do the next week? They disciplined him. They didn't say this to us because they're not trying to throw their guy under the bus. And I don't mind this. Some media guys are like, he kind of lied to us. Yeah, of course he did. You would too if you're a football coach. Sometimes they have to lie to us. And then it's our job to translate what they meant. So they asked about, somebody asked about Tywone Malone starting against Ohio University. And I'm like, well, I know why he started, because they were disciplining Eddrick for the previous week. And Ty's been playing well. Throw a bone to a 5th-year senior like Tywone Malone, good kid, good soldier. Let him get his first start as a Buckeye. Do we think Tywone Malone would have been starting the Michigan game that week? No. Nothing against Ohio University, but that was a week to discipline Eddrick. And it's not like he didn't play. He just didn't start. I think Eddrick's going to start against Washington. Everything's fine. They know he's their best 3-tech. Look how much he played as a true freshman. He entered camp. He did not have to win a job. He was the starting 3-tech entering camp, then hurt his knee the first day of camp. That's another factor here, I'm sure. A little bit of discipline, and why not rest him a little bit too, since that knee can't imagine it's 100%. Hopefully it's close to 100%, but he missed a couple of weeks with what I think was a hyperextended knee, which was like the best news we ever got about a knee. Everybody was like, oh God, is it an ACL? Is it this or that? Is he out for the year? And then later that day, I was told by a good source, hyperextension. So I was like, oh, thank God. That's the best news I've ever heard. So, yeah, I think everything's going to be fine with Eddrick. If he doesn't start against Washington and he's on the bench for the next few games, you guys can remind me how wrong I was. I think everything is fine there. Now, does he, everybody needs to be more consistent, right? Does he need to be more consistent? Of course. And I think that was hearkening back to what happened in that Grambling game. All right. Moving right along. Another young, talented player. This one not a sophomore like Eddrick Houston, a true freshman, Bo Jackson. So what did Coach Day mean when he talked about Bo Jackson? He said things like, because he was asked, is Bo Jackson ready to basically be the starter? And that paraphrasing the question. And Coach Day said, yeah, we're going to need all 3 guys. James Peoples played better against Ohio. He still hasn't played a lot of football himself, because even though he was a 3rd-string tailback last year, Quinshon and Travion stayed healthy the entire year and didn't really need the 3rd-string tailback very much last year. So James Peoples is still, very, very young in his college career in terms of just being a true sophomore and as far as the amount of game reps he's had. And Coach Day talked about it, man. James Peoples is a great practice player, but you have to like use your imagination in practice because you're not getting tackled to the ground. It's a completely different ball game in the game. And football is the only sport in the world where you don't actually practice the sport. It'd be like practicing basketball, but you just fake like you're going to shoot, and then you don't shoot the ball or whatever. Like in baseball, you have baseball practice, you don't actually hit the ball. You just swing. The pitcher pretends like he's throwing it to you, and you pretend like you're hitting it. There's nothing like football because you don't want to get guys killed in practice, but I still think mixing in some tackling is not a bad idea. That's a topic for a different day, but I get it. So they're going to need all three guys. I think he's completely right about that. What do you say about Bo Jackson? He basically said, well, there's no question Bo flashed in the last game, so we are going to build on that going forward. That was the last thing he said. There's no question Bo flashed. This is after he gave like a lot of disclaimers almost, but then he finished it with, there's no question Bo flashed in our last game, so we are going to build on that going forward. Here's my personal translation to that. This is Ryan Day talking now. Yeah, I know for sure Bo Jackson's our best running back. He's going to be RB1 before long, maybe this week, but I'm not going to tell you guys that right now. That's how I took that. And we're going to need all three guys. I take him at his word. But that last part just tells me everything I need to know. I had learned everything I needed to know in the Ohio University game. Bo Jackson was in there the third series of the game. It wasn't like he just – they gave him a chance in the second half and he put on a show. Like they entered that game knowing that he was going to be a big part of the offense, and then he stole the show. Big play waiting to happen. Big enough at 217 pounds to get the tough yards too. He's not a bruiser, but he's not like a 190-pound guy trying to go out there saying he's a big play waiting to happen, but you can't really trust him between the tackles. No. This kid's got it all, and he's just going to get better. And I think Coach Day basically said that at some point, we know he's going to be the starting running back. He already had as many carries as CJ in the last game, 2 more than James Peoples in the last game. So I think if he doesn't start on Saturday in Seattle, I think he will be the starter before long, and I think he will get the most carries for the Buckeyes. He'll get the most snaps of the 3 running backs for the Buckeyes this Saturday at Washington, I believe. It's going to be an interesting game. Okay, another thing I like here. So they're going out a day early. I love this because last year their one trip to the Pacific Northwest, of course, was Oregon, and they went out like they typically do for like road games. They just flew out the night before the game. It was a night game anyway. They had all day the next day. And Coach Day said, listen, I don't think that played a role in us losing that game by 1 point. He's like, but we're always looking for ways to get better. And I think this is, after going through the playoffs last year where it's not your typical bowl trip, some of those games you're just getting out there for like 2 nights, maybe 3 nights. That really worked out well for them. Hello, still basking. So they decided, he sat down with Mickey Marotti, his consigliere, and, they said, why don't we go out there Thursday instead? Why don't we go out there Thursday, get acclimated, they're going to still practice. They practiced yesterday as usual. They're going to practice today as usual, a little earlier. So, like, interviews today might be as early after practice. Interviews might be as early as 5 instead of 6:30. So they're going to practice today, and then they're going to practice tomorrow earlier than they normally would. Eat dinner, get on the plane, head out there. Coach Day said we're going to get a snack after we arrive at the hotel, go to bed, and get up and do our normal Saturday or our Friday routines. Best Fridays in football. I love that. So nothing really much to translate there. I just wanted to say I like that. All right. Something to translate here, though. He talked about, he didn't talk much about Oregon yesterday, last year's Oregon game. By the way, if we're going to talk about the Oregon game last year, I think we should talk about the one in the Rose Bowl. Does that sound better for you guys? My God, 34-0 in the second quarter, and the shell-shocked faces of everybody on Oregon's side just still cracks me up. Dan Lanning right down the line. So let's talk about that game a little bit. But no, I mean, Coach Day's talked about how the environment affected them last year, and they knew going in that it had the chance of affecting them, but it still did. I hate to bring this up, but hey, it all worked out in the end. Ohio State won the national championship. Still basking. Okay, but against Oregon at Autzen Stadium, they had 8 penalties for 70 yards. That was one of everybody talks about that game, the big plays Ohio State gave up and this and that, and the Will Howard, kneeling down at the controversial. Looked like he was down with 1 second left to me, but whatever. You can't make it that close. The controversial Jeremiah Smith. When I say controversial, translate that into BS, offensive pass interference, or Ohio State wins the game. But nobody really talks about the penalties in that game. And a lot of them were pre-snap penalties because that place was going crazy. And I don't think Husky Stadium is awesome. might have the best setting in college football with, right there on the lake and everything. But it will get loud. I don't think it's as loud as Autzen. That place is crazy. And I don't think it's as loud as like a nighttime whiteout at Penn State, but it will be loud. It will be, especially if Washington stays in the game. And I think this is going to be a relatively tough game. So what did he talk about? He talked about, we might have to mix in some other things like silent cadences. I think that's definitely what they're going to do. You do not want to be out there clapping with the quarterback in the shotgun when nobody can hear anything. You're not going to hear. And then the defense, even though they technically should get called for this, what's the defense going to do? They're going to rotate some of their guys, just do a little clap. Maybe the refs won't catch it, and then the Ohio State's going to jump off sides. Has to be a silent cadence. And as Coach Day said, again, this is not a translation. This is exactly what he said. I love this. He's like, listen, the bottom line is, even if it's loud and we're doing a silent cadence, like, at least we know what the snap count is, and the defense doesn't. We know if we're going on 1 or 2 or 3. They don't. It could be, what's a silent? It could be as simple as the guard tapping the center once or twice or 3 times, and there's all different kinds of ways to do it, and they're going to mix it up. But I like that they're basically saying, all right, what we did against Oregon last year didn't work as far as going out there. Yeah, it was a 1-point game, kind of got stolen from them, whatever. So we're changing up our travel schedule, and it sounds like they're even more focused on lack of pre-snap penalties. Brian Day said they're just drilling it into the offensive lineman's head. No false starts. No false starts. It's like what I tell my daughters in tennis. I say no double faults the entire match. Now, you're going to double fault once or twice, right? Hopefully just once or twice. If you get through a whole match when you don't double fault, that's great. But don't double fault ever. If that's your goal. Do not double fault. And then if you do once or twice, okay. But you can't let that be something that loses the game for you. No false starts. All right. If they have 1 or 2, so be it. But no false starts needs to be the goal. I love that. I like the little sidebar here. By the way, Washington's got a talented offense. I don't see Washington's defense being able to stay with Ohio State for 60 minutes. They're a little leaky on defense. I do like Ryan Walters, though, their defensive coordinator. I like him a lot. Was he a good head coach at Purdue the last 2 years? No, but he was fantastic as a defensive coordinator at Illinois in 2021. In 21 and 22. His 2 years at Illinois, they were really good. 21 and 22. He parlayed that into the Purdue head coaching job. Now he's at Washington. I really like their offense with Damon Williams at quarterback, and their running back is like a better version of Mayan Williams, 5'9", 228, but faster than Mayan, better than Mayan. And Mayan had, when he was healthy, Mayan was a good back, a better version of Mayan Williams, and a quarterback in Damon Williams that they compare to Kyler Murray. And I found I'll talk about Washington's defense a little bit more in a second. So their offense, this will be a good test, but Ohio State has the best defense in the country, in my opinion. So I think Ohio State's going to get it done. I think that the spread being as low as 8.5, I think Ohio State's this is going to be a tough game, in my opinion. It will be a tough game. There'll be nervous moments for all of us, but I think Ohio State's going to overwhelm them eventually. They'll get the best of them, I should say. Maybe not overwhelmed. They will get the best of them because this is the best defense in the country, in my opinion. And this will be a good test for them, a great test for them. I'll get to the Washington's defense in a moment. So I like the story how when Dylan Raiola was committed to Ohio State, and Ohio State's still recruiting him, Ryan Day, and he took his son RJ with him out to Arizona they were in the state semifinals. Dylan Raiola's team down there in Arizona is in the state semifinals. They're playing against his team, and Ryan Day's like, man, this quarterback on the other team, he's a baller. Ryan Day completely forgot that was Damon Williams Jr. until RJ Day told him, hey, Dad, that was the guy that we saw playing against Dylan. And Coach Day was like, oh my gosh, that's right. Yeah. That kid was a baller. He's like, that's all I remember. The kid was a baller. It was rainy day, and he was making plays left and right. Damon Williams, when they're comparing you to Kyler Murray, that's pretty good. We're not talking Kyler Murray in the pros either. We're talking about Kyler Murray, the fantastic college quarterback, because he can throw it. He can run. He's electric, but he runs into Arvell Reese once or twice, maybe just once. It's, you got to hit him. They did not hit Dylan Gabriel at all the first game last year, and then they hit him a lot in the Rose Bowl. Was that the only reason those games were diametrically opposed? No, but that was a good factor, a big factor. You got to make him uncomfortable. You have to hit him. The biggest thing is make him uncomfortable. All right, Washington's defense. I see some leakiness here. Now, again, I like Ryan Walters, but this was a 7-point game against a pretty bad Washington State team last week. And I know it's in-state rivalry and all that jazz. I get it. That stuff does matter. But I think their defense is a little leaky. Now, again, I think having Ryan Walters leading that defense helps, and they do have some very talented players. They have a corner who might be the tallest corner I've ever seen at 6'4", 193 pounds, and he's good. He started for Jed Fish for a couple years at Arizona, and then followed Jed Fish to Washington, has been the starter there. He started all 13 games last year, and he's good. He's good. I love when Ryan Day was asked about their other starting quarters really tall too. Ryan Day was asked about it. Like, he's like, yeah, they've got good length at corner. He's like, and he just deadpans. Our receivers are pretty tall though. He didn't smile. He wasn't judging. Our receivers are pretty, just said it matter of fact. Yeah. I don't know how Jeremiah Smith is listed at 6'3". He's definitely 6'4", but whatever. I just thought that was funny. Yeah, we'll be okay. But here's the thing. So he was asked about Ryan Walters only doing man coverage. And Coach Day was asked about that. And because Ryan Walters, the first 3 games of this season and pretty much his entire time at Illinois, they were just in man coverage the entire game. And first 3 games of his tenure at Washington this year, I don't think they've had any zone coverages at all. But here's the thing. They haven't needed to. They almost needed to last week because that game was way closer than people thought. I do think, and Coach Day alluded to this a little bit. He said, yeah, you got to be ready for everything. Here's my translation on that. Ryan Walters is a man-to-man coach. He knows he cannot play 60 minutes man-to-man against Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate, and these dogs. Well, I guess I shouldn't say dogs this week, right? These studs that Ohio State has. It's kind of like going back to Oregon. I keep using Oregon as the example. When Oregon tried to do that, how'd that work out for them? So in the Rose Bowl. So I do think, and Coach Day said we have to be ready for everything. I think translating that, I think Ryan Day knows that Ryan Walters is going to mix things up, that he's been saving some things for this game. And Ryan Walters knows that everybody knows that he's a man-to-man guy. And so he decided to take it even a step further and not play any zone first 3 games. And I think he's going to mix in some zone coverages. I'll be very surprised if he doesn't. So let's get to maybe 1 or 2 more things and we'll get you out of here. So I gotta get moving here. So yeah, we talked about all that good stuff. So yeah, I want to go back to Eddrick Houston though for a moment. Like somebody already on Bucknuts right now is asking me a question. I posted a story this morning. Yeah, I think people are making too much of that. If you're just joining the show, I led off the show with it. Eddrick Houston's going to be fine. I think they're just motivating him. When Coach Day says yesterday he's got to improve, but the talent's there. That's saying, yeah, we disciplined him last week because he had the 2 penalties against Grambling, and he needs to get focused because he's going to be a really good one. And we need him because our other 3 techs are, either not ready yet. And maybe Jarquez Carter is ready, but maybe he's not as a true freshman, or probably never going to be ready. 5th-year senior Tyrone Malone, who's played solid at times, but this year. But I've heard that they're not very high on him. So they know that they need Eddrick Houston. The more I think about it, Caden McDonald might be the most valuable player on this team. They cannot afford to lose. There's a lot of guys that could be called the most valuable player on the team, but they cannot afford to lose Caden McDonald. Man, he's just a wrecking crew in there, and they don't really have any good depth behind him. Will Smith Jr. is doing what he can, but he's kind of an undersized 1 tech. Now, people said, well, Ty Hamilton was about that size too. Ty was a little bigger than Will, and Ty was extremely stout. Not that Will Smith Jr. is weak by any means, but Ty Hamilton just played way bigger than 295. That's how he was able to be the 1 tech. People were confused. They'd say Tyleek is the 3 tech and Ty's the 1 tech. Yeah. 330-pound Tyleek Williams was the 3 tech, and 295-pound Ty Hamilton was the 1 tech. So it's not about how big you are, but like Will Smith at 6'4", 288 is obviously not your ideal 3 tech, and he's not all that stout. Caden McDonald is all that stout and then some. I love that guy. I saw the latest projection from CBS Sports has him as a 1st-round pick. Kind of thought that was going to happen. Selfishly, I was hoping that maybe keep him, he'd stay another year, and maybe he still will, but CBS now has him projected as a late 1st-round pick to Dan Rubin's Dallas Cowboys. All right, I got to close up shop a little early today. Thank you guys for this riding along with me on this edition of the show. Translating Ryan Day. We'll do this a few times in the future after, the days after his Tuesday press conference. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Again, programming note, we're going to have interviews earlier than usual. Jerry Emming said it could be as early as like 5 p.m. It's usually like at 6:30, 6:45. So we'll get Ryan Day, lightning round. We'll get some players, maybe some assistant coaches, probably just Coach Day and several players. So keep it locked to Bucknuts for all of that. Thanks to all of you. I appreciate it. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Go Bucks. Still basking.